Hi everyone, it's Brooke Klein and you're watching another movie of the week. And the movie of this week was Dr. No from 1962. So if you haven't watched it, watch it now. If you're new to movie of the week, what I do is I talk about a movie here, you guys comment below your thoughts, and then in 2024 we're doing like reboots, franchise, remakes, things of those elements. So we're actually doing 4 James Bond movies. This is the first James Bond movie. So I guess, I haven't talked about the next 3 James Bond movies that I'm choosing. But I guess I can give a little spoiler if I haven't said this in my last video, is that it's going to be different James Bonds in each of the 4. And so, with this, I was like, it's really important that I start with the first James Bond, obviously, and start with the first James Bond movie. I'm someone who loves actually action movies. I don't know if I give off that, but I love action movies, especially franchises. I think, action franchises work better than just one-off action movies. I don't think they work that well. And James Bond, that's an action movie if you don't consider it you could say spy thriller, but technically it's an action movie. So I wish I knew more about the James Bond history, who decided this, is James Bond based off of anything? I don't even know. I should know these things when I'm doing these videos, but I don't. So the first James Bond is Sean Connery. Literally Sean Connery. He's so amazing. He is the James Bond. When you think James Bond, you have to think of, they're James Bond and you can only have one person. It's Sean Connery. He is the James Bond. He is the first. And it's something where it's if I was, I don't know, in my 20s in the 60s, growing up then, I would be in love with this man, He, just speaking for me, he's exactly my type. But they definitely picked someone with some swag and everything. They definitely wanted someone who, ladies would be after. I don't know. But it's also interesting too because, we talk about it, well, we don't talk about it, but, in 50, 60, whatever years ago, the American accent is a little bit different just because of the times. And I didn't realize that, with British accents, it's the same. So James Bond is British. And, how the way he talked, you wouldn't consider that, a British accent nowadays. And I didn't realize that until, watching this now. If you ask me what happened in this movie, I don't know. And sometimes I feel action movies, the plot just doesn't make sense. And sometimes there is no plot. And, that's why action franchises work better than just one-off action movies. Because, you're what is happening in this movie? And that's just kind of what action movies are. But I feel more so this movie than other action movies, I just had no idea what was happening with the plot. I also feel it really fits into that time, the 60s and 70s, what they were those, it just fits with that, where it's if you were gonna create it nowadays, obviously there's James Bond nowadays, but if it was the first James Bond movie, they wouldn't have it be like this. It just kind of fits in that theme of those 60s and 70s, what those movies felt like. I guess it's hard to say. So it's a different style of filmmaking that doesn't really transcend to now, and it really dates the film as well. But something to say is this movie was very colorful. It's it's interesting to look at, and you can tell there's a lot of money, there's a big budget for this, which this is 1962. It's still what, that's good for them, good for them. But it's something interesting that I'm wondering is when they were doing this, did they think that there was gonna be multiple movies? Was it just something one-off? Who came up with this? Maybe they were we need a really good action movie with a spy. Where did this idea come from? I wish I could do research. I wish I could say it, but I didn't. But obviously, I don't know, this did well, because then Sean Connery himself did 4 or 5 more films, and they were all in the 60s too. Maybe one was in the 70s, but back to back. People love this. I mean, there are some things about this film where I'm it's a little bit, I don't know. Some things feel a little bit racist. Some things feel a little bit off. This is something really important to know. James Bond movies are kind of sexist. Not so much the ones nowadays. But definitely before the 2000s, they were definitely sexist, and I feel like especially what am I saying? Did I say John? Sean Connery's movies are like his James Bond is the most sexist James Bond. And I don't think, like, I feel like this movie didn't feel like the most sexist one. Like, I definitely remember when I was like watching all these James Bond movies. Like, I watched some of the James Bond movies in the past, and then during the pandemic in 2020, I like rewatched them all together. So some things I rewatched, some things are new. So when I was like watching them, I was like, there was this one that was Sean Connery that like stuck out to me. It was like so sexist. I don't remember which one, but it's something where it's like, you know, the Bond girl, and he has to sleep with at least 2 women in every film. And so in this movie, he gets with like 3 women. So it's something where it's like, it's also like selling a lifestyle, like selling class, and like a guy who can just get girls easily, and every girl that he meets is like in love with him. And like obviously it was such a time of like cigarettes too, so like in the first scene we see him, like, you know, the way that they had it where like he's a big deal, like the way the filmmaking with like, this is James Bond, and he got like a cigarette in mouth, he's like, Bond, James Bond, or whatever he says in that moment. But like, it is a little bit sexist, and the women are reduced to these type of roles. Obviously, like the last woman he was with, like she was like, you know, kind of fighting back a little bit, but like she shows up in a bikini, a white bikini, and then, you know, she's a little bit like harmless, and he has to like save her, which like, yes, I understand that action movies are about saving people and whatever, but it's just like kind of like the writing of the woman. But again, like that was the time, and that's how they wrote women. And so it's like, yeah, like nowadays, and like the James Bond nowadays, like yes, there are Bond women or whatever, but they're like written better and have like more, I guess. And it's something where it's like, you know, you can critique these old movies from the 60s. You know, I love old movies. I love Charlie Chaplin. I feel like Charlie Chaplin films, like, they're not sexist, but Charlie just thinks he's like the greatest guy ever. Sorry, Charlie, I love you. But so like, you can critique these films, but you gotta realize like sometimes it's like, that was the time, and like, what are we gonna do? Like, you know, blacklist these like James Bond movies just because they're a little bit sexist? Like, I don't know. But anyway, that's kind of this movie, and obviously like wasn't the greatest, and I'm kind of like, how were they like, let's make more because of this movie? Because it just seems like so like I'm bored watching it actually, but maybe it did really well at the time, I don't know. So that's this first James Bond movie, and then the next one we're gonna watch is The Spy Who Loved Me from 1977. So it's a different James Bond. I think this one's Roger Moore. So anyway, comment below your thoughts about Dr. No, and watch The Spy Who Loved Me. I think that's what it is for next week. Thank you guys for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and bye.